see that grow and see that bloom as everyone all over the world kind of jumped on and put these connections together. I've been witness to a few large changes on the web, and the web is interesting in that I think it evolves as a platform in a way that's pretty unique compared to other platforms as well. The first evolution was Ajax, when we kept adding capabilities to the web. We wanted to make it prettier, so we added styling with CSS and the like. And we wanted to do more dynamic interfaces, so we added JavaScript. But we kept pushing and kept pushing. And when someone on the Outlook web team at Microsoft put together the XML HTTP request object that kind of birthed the Ajax movement, we got to go from this world of documents and kind of rich documents and really kind of blow up and allow you to build real web applications. And we remember that with immersive apps like Google Maps, Gmail, and Google Suggest and the like on the Google side. And this was a massive difference. And you go back and think about what it was like before that. I remember going to MapQuest, for example, before Google Maps, and every time you wanted to pan around to another area in there, you had to wait for the server to send everything down again. The web created some new capabilities, took a bit of time to work out how to deliver on those capabilities, and we built the desktop web app revolution, going from documents to apps. Just in time for the web to take over, for mobile to take over rather, and the big explosion that happened with mobile. And now it's easy to think back and remember this, kind of this explosion happening as though it kind of came out of nothing. But for those who've been around a little bit, you may remember it was kind of a long time coming. I remember going to Java 1 back in the Sun days, and every keynote they'd be up there talking about how this is the year for mobile, developers learn J2ME, it's going to be huge. And then it never happened until we got the iPhone and then Android, and then mobile totally took off, and we got to the point where mobile has eclipsed desktop entirely. I do think it's important, though, for us to remember that it's not that desktop isn't growing anymore, it's not that desktop isn't going away, so it's really important that we're able to build experiences that actually work there. I don't know about you, but there are some services that I use where it feels like the team's all off working on mobile, and I use this to try and be productive all day, and nothing's really changing on the desktop side. So I'm actually really proud of the fact that you can develop things responsively across desktop and mobile too. Some scary statistics came out after mobile really was taken off and people were building these native apps. And I was thinking about, like, well, what's actually happening to the web? If you look at the stats and you see, well, only 13% of the time is spent on the mobile web compared to apps where they're getting 87% of user time, that's a little bit dire. That's not the kind of thing that we as web developers would like to see. But this is a very macro statistic, and it was important for us to go deeper and take a look at what actually was happening there. And you're going to see a series of case studies where we actually go in and look at different companies and what's happening to them to kind of piece apart what's really happening out there. One of the things to piece apart in general was just, of all of that time, 80% of it was just spent in the top 3 apps that a user has. So it wasn't about just the native platform versus web, it was the actual experiences that they were working with. And then if you go deeper within that, you see that a lot of the top apps are kind of platforms themselves, and a lot of the content that's within it is actually web content that's going to different web services. So the picture got a lot muddier. So let's take a look at a little bit of what's going on with the whole web versus native thing as we kind of move forward from desktop into mobile. And if you look at one axis, you've got what are the capabilities and what are the access to capabilities that you get from a particular platform. So in the world of apps, you obviously get access to the entire native platform. You kind of do all of the permission modeling a little bit up front in the App Store and some runtime permissions, and then you kind of get to do whatever you want from then on. And you get access to the places where users really want to get access to those experiences, like the home screen and the notifications bar and things of that nature. So you get access to all of the capabilities of the native device. The web, on the other hand, doesn't get access to all of those, especially back in the day. But then you add in reach, and you think about that magic of the URL, where we got to see with 5 miles, the difference that we can make by upgrading our web experience and being able to just share this URL and get access to not only the application, but potentially directly to the state that really matters. And again, I think back to the old days of installing software and the like, compared to being able to send a URL to my dad, who can then just click on it and get directly into that experience and start actually getting something done. Another startling statistic that came out, again with the macro lens, is something that doesn't really make a lot of sense. How can no one be downloading any apps? That doesn't really make sense. But this is good old statistics and rounding. This is all about the fact that people have kind of slowed down the number of apps that they're downloading, because you've kind of got the apps that you want to be working with now. You've got your favorites, they're lined up. Apps that you download tend to be the services you're really loyal to. And so if you're a newcomer coming into the game, it's really hard to fight for a spot directly on that home screen. You've got to get people to go through all of this process, download the app from the App Store. That's a really tricky proposition. So we've got to struggle to get access to our users, and what can we do? So one thing is, what if we could take the benefits of the web and actually deliver on the capabilities and kind of up-level the web again and give you access to all of the things that we actually wanted and all of the things that users want to be able to get work done on mobile? And that's exactly the work that we, not just Google, but the entire web community have been doing. This is us enhancing the platform itself, learning about what works, and giving you, the developers, access to the underlying platform in a way that's secure for users, in a way that can be at the end of a URL. This is what I'm really excited about. We had Ajax for the world of desktop apps, and we've finally got the capabilities that you need to deliver fantastic mobile applications. And so that's what we mean when we talk about progressive web apps. It basically is just saying that we're here for mobile natively on the web. And we saw this big transformation where I remember at the beginning with Ajax, we'd talk about the different technologies that were involved. And then over time, it just started to mean just the user experience itself had been up-leveled. And we're trying to do the same thing here with PWAs on mobile. We don't want to just share, here's all of the different APIs that you have access to. That's really important, and we're going to go into those details. But we really want you to think about the user experience itself and how to make sure that you really kind of up-level that experience on the mobile web. Because the partners that we've been working with now have really been able to delight their users. Because let's face it, sometimes you go on the mobile web and it's not the best experience. So if you deliver something that's really tantalizing and delightful, it's going to be great, and the results are going to show. So what do we need to actually do? How are we going to up-level the experience and give you the capabilities that you need to deliver to your users? So the first piece is we need a reliable experience. We need to make sure that users know that they can use the web even if the connectivity is intermittent. Now, this was actually hard on the web because its roots back in time were in a very different world. You remember back then when you were connecting to the internet, it wasn't you connecting through your phone to the internet, it was you connecting your household to the internet. You'd go, you'd get a modem, you'd start dialing up, and you'd hear that magical sounds that are coming through the modem to get you connected. And now you're jacked into the matrix. You're ready to do things. And then you have that fear where you start doing a big download or something, and you hope that someone doesn't pick the phone up or call you and disrupt the entire process. But it was very binary. You're either connected to the internet or you weren't. That's what the web was all about. That's what it was based on, whether it be on a dial-up or sitting there in a university on a nice flush T1 line. You knew that you were always connected. If you weren't, you got to see this guy, the dinosaur, and you weren't happy. And I've got kids at this point now back home, and this really doesn't make them happy other than the fact they can play the little game while they wait for me to try and fix the Wi-Fi at home. This is very, very frustrating to users. But what we find is there's actually something that's more hidden and more frustrating going on, and something that we need to tackle as developers to get these experiences working reliably, and that's the notion of Li-Fi. So you've all probably experienced this, where you're looking at your phone, and it looks like you're fully connected to Wi-Fi, or you're fully connected to your cell network, but it doesn't seem to be working. We've got this problem where we're connected to the access point that may be close to us, but that doesn't mean we're actually connected to the internet itself. And then when you start to do something, you don't see the dinosaur. You're just kind of sitting there with a spinner trying to work out what's going on. We, the web platform provider, needed to give you the hook so you could take ownership over this and make things still work even as the network is going up and down and all of the issues that we run into every day on cell networks and the like. So that's what reliability is for us. It's about making sure that your users never see this dinosaur when they're using your experience, and you're able to do it. And as you sit through the different sessions today, you're going to see exactly what it takes to get rid of this dinosaur. Okay, reliability, that's key, and that's something that we need to kind of keep teaching users so they know that when they go on the web, it's always working no matter what. The next side is performance and speed. Ben in the keynote talked about the strong focus that we have there and how we're trying to attack it in different ways with AMP as one option to get content running really quickly. But we also needed to put things into the platform itself to enable you to make incredibly fast experiences. Fast meaning loading things incredibly quickly on first load, but also as your users experience your application, it's that buttery smooth environment that Ben was talking about. You get 60 frames per second. It feels like it's right there with your finger. It just works as it should. It's just like native. Now, this performance isn't just about pleasing your users. We see time and time again that performance goes directly to the bottom line. Soster is a company that does a lot of monitoring out there for your applications and applications in the wild. And they did a famous study a year or so ago where they looked at the bounce rates in the world of e-commerce and other vectors, and they just started to measure the effects of those bounce rates depending on how slow your experience is. And you can see there's key moments, like if your load time is over 3 seconds, there's a bounce rate of 20%. And as you get slower and slower, the bounce rate gets worse and worse. So anything you can do to fix this performance will instantly bring more money in the door, and your users won't be off to play Candy Crush or some other game. They'll be focused doing whatever they need to do with your experience. Now, this was done a year or so ago. The DoubleClick team just did another study, and things have gotten even worse. 53% of users abandon sites that take longer than 3 seconds. This is a wake-up call for us on the web and in general. We need to fix the obesity epidemic that we have on the web. We need to deliver faster experiences because your users are just going away when this doesn't happen. And sometimes you don't even notice. So a lot of our effort recently has been about targeting this problem. This is kind of the number one problem that we have, is to allow us to have really fast experiences on mobile itself. And we do things across Chrome, across APIs, across the platform, CDNs, you name it. We need to come together to really fix this problem for users. Now, the good news is you can do it. You can provably do it. We're seeing a lot of partners coming out with these new progressive web apps that are showing this off. So the Washington Post, they're a news outlet over in the US, and they went off and built a new progressive web app, and they focused a lot on this exact issue, on performance. And so they focused on initial page loads, and that was really great. And then they're really proud to also focus on, once you've got things loaded, they have a nice, rich experience, lots of imagery. It's not like they're not doing anything and kind of having a bare bones experience. It's a great experience that when you tap on that article, something's going to load in 80 milliseconds. They do a lot with prefetching. They do a lot with service worker caches, things that we're going to talk about later. They're able to deliver this really, really beautiful experience. And all of this technology is available for you to do the same thing. One of the cute little things that they did was if you go to their articles now and check it out, they actually put right into the article how long it took to render that article. They're really putting it front and center because I think that team is just so proud of what they're doing for performance, and users are noticing. Okay, so we need reliably fast experiences, and we also need them to be engaging. We need them to be really fun and useful for users, and we need you, the developer, to be able to reach that user and for them to be able to reach them. So the areas that we think are most important there are threefold. First up, we need to give you the capability to get your web experience on the home screen. Again, we talked about how loyal users, they're the ones that want to be able to add you to the home screen, and so they can come back to you easily from wherever they are. So we had to give the API as a platform to you folks to be able to get access to that. And that's been done with this add to home screen feature that you'll see. But then in exchange for that, you need to deliver the experiences that people want to add to the home screen and that meet the expectations they have when they tap on something that's on the home screen. The second thing we need to be able to do is allow you to develop a truly immersive experience. So that means you get the full screen. There's no browser Chrome that's getting in the way or anything that just doesn't feel quite right. You get full access to everything. You can customize theme colors on the headers and do whatever you want. So to the user, it just feels like a fully immersive experience. And then thirdly, we need access to notifications. Now, notifications have been probably the biggest deal, the biggest effect that we've had with the world of mobile. Right? You think about it, what's a big difference between going from my laptop at home or at work compared to what happens now with mobile? I've got this thing that's with me at all times, 24/7. I sometimes have to remember to charge it and get it out of my sight at home so it doesn't start kind of running my life for me. But there's full access available to every user that you can then choose to use to be able to give them information that makes sense for them. Now, that doesn't mean abusing this, but if you do it right, it's going to enable you to have a really excellent up-leveling of your re-engagement. So here with web push notifications, just like Ben said before, you can go through, set something up, get a push notification. Doesn't matter if the browser's open or anything like that. It's going to come through and get to your code so you can show something to the user and then entice them back into your experience. This is a huge deal. If you look at all of our case studies, anyone who uses push notifications, you see the massive bump that they get when they use them. We've got a whole session on push notifications. We also want to make sure that our users are protected as always. And so with everything on the web, you'll see that there's a permissions model behind it. And so when you think it's time and you think it makes sense for push notifications for the user can then go in and allow or disallow what's going on. We also highly recommend that you add notification settings. So it's not just a blanket statement of, do I want push or not? You have the ability as a user to fine-tune really what I want to get out of you. And when we see people doing that, people are more apt to stay with push notifications and not turn them off. So really recommend that you do that work. Okay, let's take a look at what an immersive experience actually looks like and how it works. This example is from CNET. CNET is a technology site. And they went off, one of their teams, and put this into production recently. A separate PWA that was just kind of exploring what something on tech with a few articles could be like as an immersive PWA experience. And so let's say you went to the URL at the top there, cnet.com/techtoday, or maybe you did a search for something, or maybe it comes from an email. Anyway, you get the URL, you tap on that, you're now into this experience. Very rich, very immersive. You see at the top there's that 01. You can just kind of flip through these really nice articles and experiences and then scroll up and down and explore them. Now, when it's appropriate, when you've got a user that's been to your site regularly and the like, the browser will say to you as a developer, hey, this might be a good time to ask that user if they want you to add your experience to the home screen. What people are really doing here is thinking about what is the right time to say that to the user. So that may not be as soon as we say, hey, it's available. It may be waiting for a particular action. Like when they've bought something, maybe you then say, hey, maybe now's a good time for you to track what's going on, sign up for push notifications, add me to the home screen or whatever. But here I go through, I've got the standard UI, I tap on Add to Home Screen. It's now going to add it in the background and tell me along the bottom there that it's been done. And now the user can kind of go along, still browsing, do their own thing, or they can go into the immersive experience. Okay, so let's say it's a month later, and the user wants to go back into that experience, and they go to their home screen, and they see that the icon's there. It looks exactly the same as their native app, because it is the same thing. They tap on the app. It then launches up. You have full access to this experience. I have a splash screen. So while you're quickly loading and getting things ready, you can theme things that make sense for your brand. And then you get right into the experience. And what's the difference here? The difference is there's no URL bar at the top. Right? There's no notion of the fact that this is using a browser or using web technologies at all. And that's by design, right? The user may have forgot where they did that add to home screen from. They don't know, they don't care, they just want to get in there and start using your experience. Now, maybe they go into the task switcher in the bottom, and then again, the representation that they get is one where it just feels like any old application, right? It's just like a native app to them, and that's the whole point. So, reliable, fast, and engaging applications, that's the key. How do we actually do this? What's the technology that's behind all of this? It's what we talked about at the keynote. It's that service worker technology. And this is the fix that we had to put in. Again, when you're connected to that dial-up and you've connected your home to the web, the browser's talking to this web server, and it's reliant on that web server to do anything. That's where it needs to go to get any of its logic or its information. And as soon as something goes offline, you're toast. You can't do anything for the user. So we had to create a service worker, this technology that allows you to build a proxy that's just JavaScript, that's just a small piece of code that you can install down for the user. So a user comes to your site, you download this piece of code, and now you have full control, full access to watch what's going on. So requests start coming in from Flipkart, this experience, and you can go through and proxy that and say, you know what, I've got all of this information. I've got the Chrome for the actual app itself. I'm going to grab it from the cache. Or I'm going to go and run a race. I'm going to go to the cache and return some data, and then I'm going to go to the website at the end, and when new data comes back from that, I'll then update my application. You can do whatever you want. You have full access and control. Now, this is the base for a lot of the different technology that we're adding to the web these days, including push notifications. So now, your website, example.com, sends a push message out. It's going to end up coming over to your little piece of code that just says, okay, here's the event that's coming in. You then get to do whatever you want with that event, probably ending up with showing an actual notification for the user. You don't have to worry about the life cycle. You don't have to worry about was there a service worker in memory or any of that stuff. Doesn't matter if the browser was there or not. The whole operating system will make sure that this works and send you the correct message. Now, we talked about Alibaba in the keynote and the work that they've been doing in the world of commerce, the increase in conversions that they were getting, and the fact, I don't know if you noticed, where we talked about the usage increase across iOS and Android. And to me, it's really interesting that they got this bump on Android that has service workers, but they also got a bump on iOS. But iOS doesn't support service workers. So what happened? Why did they get a bump in their usage? The reason is the key part of progressive web apps is the progressive part. They went in and took care of their experience. With Safari, it may not have service workers today, but it has a lot of support for now the latest specs on the web component side. It's got a lot of support for doing things performantly. And so by taking the care and just starting there, starting with the web standards and the fundamentals, and then progressively adding in service worker support and extra features, enable them to make things better for all of their users, not just for users that happen to be on the latest and greatest. This is really important. We really care about this at Google. We're not just focused about building things for Chrome users. Another thing that they have access to in the world of commerce is really cleaning up transactions. So a key issue on the web is signing up or signing in to a website. We've all seen those forms that are really ugly to fill out and the like, and we have new standards with credential manager APIs and the like on sign up and payments on the payment side, where now Alibaba can take all of this and just keep streamlining all of the work to just really enable users to get in and out and make their purchases. Okay, so how do you actually get started? The basis of everything is to make sure that you've secured your web experience. So this is the key to everything. You need to make sure that you're getting on HTTPS. The green lock is there. The user knows it's secure. We're moving, as a web platform, all of the key capabilities to be within a secure origin. As we entrust you, the developers, with more native capabilities, we need to make sure that it's getting access to your code and the user isn't getting fished into some other area and bad things are happening. So step one, if you haven't done it, is you need to immediately get onto HTTPS. Okay, from there, you've got a few different paths. We've now worked with a bunch of partners, and there are different ways that you can go about actually getting your experience up and running. And we understand that people working at companies, working at businesses, they can't all just stop what they're doing and just go off and build a brand new experience. We need to have different tactics. And we've seen 3 patterns really show through. We're going to talk about going from the ground up, just doing a full rewrite. This is the dream. This is the dream for me as an engineer, to have a full greenfield to go build things. So that's ideal. You may not be able to do that. And so another option is to do a simple version of what you're building. And we'll talk about that approach. And then finally, you can just go and take one API from the PWA landscape and just go deep on that API and start building from there. Okay, let's take a look at one of the examples of going ground up. This is a Nigerian e-commerce company called Konga. And a lot of their customers are on 2G connections. They really care about connectivity and delivering fast experiences. And so they took one of their teams that had actually native developers as well as web developers, and they built from scratch a new checkout flow using all of the new capabilities. And it's really cool how even like right now it's using this phone support. They go through and make sure that even when they're offline, you can still check out. And with the last option being, we're really sorry, we can't do anything online, but hey, just call us and our customer support will get this through. So they've really thought end-to-end about the entire experience. So they did this from scratch. They pushed it out there, and they were really surprised to see that the amount of data that they were using was dramatically less than their pretty lightweight Android application. So they're able to get much better performance out of this. In areas where data costs a lot of money, this was a big deal. This was a big side effect for them. And then they also measure something that was really interesting to me, which was the amount of time, or the amount of data to get a transaction. And they found that, once again, through that flow, they could drop 82% of that data out of that transaction. This is a massive deal for folks working in these types of environments. Another e-commerce company, Flipkart, They went through and did a PWA. They were one of the earliest groups that did this. Another focus for them was in India, they kept running into the issue of having to get APK size really, really small. And so if you compare their native application, which is the Flipkart one there, to the Flipkart Lite application, which is a PWA, you see it's not just like a little bit less, it's over 300 times smaller. Right? So they're able to get people into that application in no time. You're talking about kilobytes, not megabytes. This was a massive deal for their users and for their business. Okay, so if you can, doing a ground-up approach is going to get you a fantastic experience. Let's take a look at a simple version. Air Berlin in the travel industry, they didn't have time to do the full ground-up rewrite first, so they thought about the different user journeys that they have. And one of them that's really important that they were failing was not picking your flight and purchasing your flight or any of that side of things, but actually after that. And what's the experience like where you show up at the airport and you just want to get access to your itinerary, your boarding pass, all of your information? And so they focused on that piece. They flushed out that feature set, and they built this little PWA experience that would guarantee you, the customer, to be able to get access to all of that information and make sure that it works offline, because we've all been to airports where the Wi-Fi is a little bit shaky and the cell networks aren't working that great. So they put through all of this work, and they found at the end that the load time was less than a second. So they're able to bring this really niche use case that was really vital for their users and deliver that outside of the bounds of their main desktop web application and the like. They're able to just kind of really focus in and do a great job with that. Okay, the final approach is taking one part of the API, or one API from the myriad of APIs that we have in the world of progressive web apps. So a great example of that is weather.com, where again, what was really important to them was re-engagement. If you think about a site like weather.com, it may not be the kind of site that everyone is like refreshing every hour. You know, what's the weather now? How's it changed? It's not that kind of experience. So instead, they wanted to think about, how do I reach those users? How do I reach them to tell them it's going to rain or there's a dramatic difference in the weather? Well, the best way to do that is through push notifications. They were used to that in the native world, but a lot of users don't need to have something on the home screen or like fully native just to know a little bit about what's going on with their weather. So what they did was they went big on push and push only, and they launched it to over 60+ languages globally. And when they did that, they were able in just a few months, just 3 months, get over 1 million people using those push notifications. So you think about their business and the amount of re-engagement you get when you have 1 million people in there being notified when something's changing. That's a massive leap in the curve of user engagement for them. So you've got a menu of choices. You need to really think about what makes for you depending on the company that you're at, the legacy code base that you may have. Are you ready and primed for a rewrite to do something different? There's a lot of different things that are out there, and we'd love to hear from you over in the web booth and after talks and the like to have us help in any way on what the right choice is and what makes sense for you. We also want to guide you in other ways. Ben talked about how we've got a new developer side out there that's targeted towards this region, which is really exciting. We've got a lot of our web content up there available to you. But we also want to do more than that. We want to have tools that kind of walk you through the path. The web is a really big platform. You can do so much with it, and it can be a little bit daunting to think about, like, well, what do I do next? How do I take on this big challenge? And so we started to think about what could we do to help web developers. And we came up with this tool that we called Lighthouse because it's trying to kind of light the way for you. And so the vision for this is that you're running this all the time on your application. and it's giving you a score and giving you information on what's working and what isn't working. So it's going to hold you accountable to your performance, to make sure that you're doing a great job with that performance, and it's going to give you hints on what to do to make things faster. This started off with a lot of information on the performance side, but this is an open source project, and we've been building more and more new rules into the system. And so there's this whole notion that we call do better web that's in there that's just watching your application and it's telling you things, right? In the world of AI and machine learning, we should be able to go in, look at our code bases, start to see patterns, and start telling you as developers what are things that you should notice. And so I really recommend that you take a look at Lighthouse, and we have a whole talk today that's all about tools, including Lighthouse. This is going to be able to walk you through the process and kind of hopefully hold your hand a little bit as we go along with that, and then linking into all of the rich documentation that we have available. So it's been kind of a wild ride for us over the last year. I'd say, we got the technology out there at the bleeding edge a couple of years ago, but then over the last year, the whole browser community has really come together and started getting the capabilities across lots of different browsers. The web frameworks communities have really come together. It's a big effort for us to be able to build for mobile. There's totally different constraints that we have to be aware of. And so that's why you see that Angular's creating Angular 2, because you need to think differently when you build for mobile. And we see similar things happening in the world of React. We have a framework called Polymer that sits within the Chrome team that's really trying to push the boundaries and be kind of like the Tesla for what it means to take web standards and build something really quickly on mobile. So the framework communities are coming together. And now it's up to us as just general web developers to come together to deliver this functionality for our users. So if there's one thing I ask and that you take away from is, I really appreciate you coming here to listen, to hear what we have to say. This is a big revolution for us on the web, and there's a lot of work for us to do to make this just really killer on mobile. And we think that we've got the capabilities that allow you to help us cause an extinction to the whole dinosaur race, so to speak, and get rid of those offline dinosaurs. With that, Shay, thank you.
Thanks, Steven, for the great keynote. 接下来时间的话，我们有大概10到15分钟时间，可以回答一些问题。如果有问题给 Dion 的话 ，OK。
可以用中文说是吧？因为我看刚才举的一些例子，包括版屏幕的那些 icon， 基本上看上去都是电商和新闻这一块。如果用一些做来一些小的那个休闲小游戏，有没有一些就是给一些建议或者是利弊什么之类的
Okay, let me translate the questions. So the audience is asking, she saw all the examples about e-commerce and news, and whether she was wondering whether there are more examples around small games and etc. Right?
Got it. Okay, great. Thank you. Good question. So games is an interesting venue for us. We're seeing that there's a lot of new web games being created and being put into other areas where things work on the web. So recently, for example, Facebook just announced gaming on their platform, and it uses web as its core technology. And so if you think back to the old days of Flash games and the like, there was a real community of doing games on the web, and we're starting to see that more and more. And with a lot of the key capabilities that we're talking about here, you need your game to work offline. All of these things can very much be used in the world of games. And so we're seeing a large push. The initial push was kind of publishing and then e-commerce, and then the newest thing these days is around the kind of gaming vertical.
Hi there. I saw the cute dinosaur on your mic. So I love your technology you talk about. And in this country, we have some network issues such as GFW. And if I want to use my next service to use that push service, and there will be problem in here. If there is some network issue, what will we do about the web push, especially in China? Yes.
Got it.
Thank you.
Great question. So the question is, different regions have very different constraints. They have users using different browsers. They have the constraints that you mentioned with networking issues and the like. And so what we're trying to do as a web community there is to work really closely with all of the different browser vendors and CDN providers and everyone we can to be able to deliver these capabilities. So the whole reason that web push exists the way it does is that it's an open standard that anyone can implement. So it's not a Google push or anything like that. It's fully open. And so what we're finding, especially as of late, a lot of the browser vendors are really coming together to tackle these kind of problems. But one of the reasons that we're here is to learn from you folks on what are the things that aren't working here and what you need from us. That's a great point.
Hi, I am an Android application developer. And if I want to replace some of my function with web, can I benefit from the PWA? If I can, how?
Got it. So Android developer thinking about how does the PWA world fit in. So I think there's always a role for native development. That's not going away anywhere. What PWA really is about is up-leveling the web to take on the most important capabilities. And so what we're finding more and more is that to reach these users, instead of just trying to block and force them to install your application, depending on what you're building, it actually seems to make more sense to have something for them that they can actually start using. So depending on what you're building, you can think about how much could you do on the web there now that we've kind of up-leveled and what makes sense. And then if there are some capabilities that the web doesn't have yet, you've got a path onto native. And we're working on getting more and more of these paths set up for you. But we think time and time again across a lot of the verticals, we actually can give you what you need for a lot of use cases just using the web.
Thank you. I want to know, as a user, how can I get into the PW website and fandom, just such as throughout the search or the website set and so on. Yeah.
Got it. So I think the question is, as a user, how do I find these PWAs? How do I actually use them and the like? One of the really nice things about PWAs, for a long time we kept hearing about, you've got these app stores. Where's the web app store? And Chrome came out with a Chrome web store and the like. And we have some of these sites, like there's a site called pwa.rocks that's a catalog more for developers for us to get inspiration on different PWAs. But the real beauty about PWAs is you don't need to go to a store to download them. And you can go ahead and use search or get access through WeChat and the like through a link, and you get access to this rich application. And so once you have this all through the power of URLs, you can use anything that you want to get your message out to users, to get them to then start getting real benefit and value from using your application. And then at the very end, the loyal users will want to do add to home screen. But you don't have to ask all of your user base to think, okay, do you want the app or not on day one? You can, again, progressively allow that to unfold for them.
I have known that Chrome has much APIs to support PWA, but I want to know if users use other browsers or other operating systems. my PWA apps can work perfectly on these other platforms?
Great question. So once again, users use lots of different browsers, lots of different platforms. Chrome has a lot of these great PWA APIs, but not every browser does. So the good news there is that Firefox, Opera, a lot of these folks are implementing and have implemented Microsoft Edge and the like, a lot of these APIs. So the APIs are coming quickly. But again, the whole point of PWA is that progressive piece where as the user gets more capabilities, you can then do something new with that user. And if you think about a world where you have chat interfaces and Google Home voice interfaces, and you separate all of the different pieces of what it takes to actually interact with something, it's a really nice way to develop services and applications. Because now, with that voice UI, you may want to show something that you can actually pick in a UI that's visual, and the web is perfect for that. And so it's a different way of thinking. You can go responsive, you can go across desktop, mobile. As a capability is available, you just then get to use it. And again, you don't have to make this binary choice of yes or no. And the good news from our side is just we've been really excited with how quickly the browser community is working on these features. Another side of it is you still have access through other means like Cordova and the like to be able to bridge into native from your web technology too. So if there's that one API that you really need to use and you want to get in the store, you can take your app, you can use a Cordova and get access to that and put it in a store. So you have lots of different escape hatches.
I think it would be last question because we need to leave like, or it's already.
I think we can actually have two more.
还有2个问题可以问。OK, I'll start from. 问问中间的人吧。
Hello, I have a question about is there some possibility in the future that the PWA special feature like pushing feature can run in iOS device? And is there Google can talk about this with Apple in future? Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So I obviously can't speak for Apple. We would love to have PWAs running in Safari and iOS. The good news again recently is if you look at what Apple is coming out with, the recent support for different specs in web components and the like, we feel really good at the progress that they're making towards all of the key things that go into a progressive web app. And so we're really helpful. We've got actually really good relationships with the Safari team itself. They tend to be, fairly secretive and the like, and we respect that. But we're seeing things going in the right direction. So we think that that's going to come on iOS. But once again, we want to build other tools that allow you to still get onto iOS. So one being the progressive nature, you can build a great experience and you see big uptake, and the other being phone gappy type solutions to enable yourself to take that technology and get it into a native app.
Oh, okay. So this would be the last question. And before that, I would like to use the minute to actually remind lunch is served on the 4th floor. And the afternoon session is going to start in 12:30. So we are going to have a lot more excellent talks and deep dive into afternoon. 就提醒一下，就是说最后一个问题，然后午餐是在4楼的这个宴会厅，然后12点半是下午的那个 session 开始，所以下午会有更多的时间可以提供给大家有各种问题，还有一些比较深入的一些了解。OK， last question.
Hi, I got one question. For native aids, we know we have native aids can interact with other native aids via intent or deep link. So does PWA support the interact with other native aids or PWA apps?
Great, that's a fantastic question. So the question was, on Android, for example, you have intents and a way for native apps to talk to each other. how does that work in the world of PWAs? So when you install a PWA in Android, you actually are installing an APK itself. And so you are able to interact. And we're doing a lot of work right now on setting things up so you can interact really nicely between the two. If you take a look, we just talked about a new API called the Web Share API that allows you to do sharing, rich sharing from within the worlds of PWAs. And so as you imagine this world where these PWAs are just APKs and that you could set up intents and the like, the whole power of the web is the fact that you can compose things with mashups and tie things together with URLs. And so we're going to be putting a lot of effort in to make that really work well, both between PWAs and also PWAs connecting with native apps. And we're really excited about that. Thank you. So again, we've run out of time now, but thanks so much for spending time with us, and I can't wait to see what you guys develop. 谢谢。